Detroit veterans report for training camp on July 26th at Detroit Lions training facility in Allen Park as the Lions begin another season searching for their first playoff win since 1991. We'll see if the new coach and players can help them break that streak as we preview training camp for the Detroit Lions by going one-on-one with Jeremy Reisman, Pride of Detroit managing editor at SB Nation, on the OFN meeting room with Greg DePalma. Monday, July 2nd, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning into the OFN meeting room as we preview NFL training camps for the 2018 season with Detroit Lions managing editor at SB Nation for the Pride of Detroit, Jeremy Reisman. Jeremy, thanks for helping us talk Lions football today.
Hey, thanks for having me. I'll talk Lions any time of the day.
Well, I wanted to get you on because you guys do a really good job at Pride of Detroit. Tell me a little bit about your background there, how long you've been working for them.
Yeah, I kind of started there just as a commenter, which I think is kind of the path that a lot of people take on the SB Nation site. The guy who used to run the site, Sean Ewell, kind of noticed the stuff that I was writing. We have a little fan post section where anyone can post their own little articles. And then I got kind of promoted to a contributor role about 6 or 7 years ago. And then when Sean stepped down 3 years ago, he asked me to take over. So I've been running the site for 3 years now.
All right. And you've been a Lion fan your whole life?
Absolutely. Grew up in Michigan, had season tickets as a kid, basically watched every game since, 6 years old or so. So I think I know the team pretty well.
How old are you?
I'm 32.
Wow. So that means, I'm gonna try to do this in my head. Does that mean you have never really remembered a playoff win before?
Yeah, I was a little too young at the time. I think I was 6 or 7 when they last won the game, and I've never been to a playoff game either, which is something that I'm looking to check off the box this year, hopefully.
All right, so that's just once again an example of when you hear about some teams out there that have been suffering, it does prove that there's always another fan base that suffered more. So all right, well, look, I really do like though what I've seen from the team. It starts at the top. Bob Quinn has, I think, done a good job. He brings in a guy he knows well, Matt Patricia. And I just look at some of the moves that they've made over the last few years. They've got the franchise quarterback in Matthew Stafford. I know what they're trying to do there. They're trying to get bigger, more physical. They want to run the ball more. They want to just be a more, a real football team. And I think after what we saw in this past draft too, by adding Ragnow at center and Johnson at running back, and a few other big bodies along the offense and defensive lines, that this team is getting really close to putting themselves in a position to not only win a playoff game, but possibly do something even a little bit more special. Not sure if it's going to happen this year, but I think they're getting close.
I definitely think they're on the right track as well. It might be too early for them, like you said, but this team has been hanging around 500 for the past 6 years, really. I think since 2011, they're one game over 500. So they've been ready to make the jump for quite a long time, and I think you pointed out the biggest key, and that's establishing a running game, because this team has really gone out and really focused on making an offensive line that can protect Matthew Stafford and can finally get a running game going, because this has been the worst running game basically since Barry Sanders left. They haven't had any running back really establish themselves as a clear starter, and they're hoping Kerryon Johnson is that guy. But just as importantly, they're focusing on that offensive line. And like you said, Frank Ragnow, definitely a big contributor this year. Last year they went out and got T.J. Lang and Rick Wagner in free agency, 2 guys who are going to start for the next few years. And years before that, they locked up their left tackle with Taylor Decker. They got another guy, Graham Glasgow, in the 3rd round. So they've been really, really focused on that offensive line. And if they don't see results this year, I'm not sure they ever will, because they also went out and changed their offensive line coach. When the Lions fired Jim Caldwell at the beginning of the year, they only fired one other coach, and that was their offensive line coach. So it was clear that they had some issues there, and they went hard this offseason trying to fix it, and we'll see if it finally turns around this year.
We can hear you okay, Jeremy, but there's a little bit of an issue with the sound. I don't know if that's something you can fool around with just to check it out. That's a little bit better, I think.
All right, I'll hold it a little bit closer to my
There
face.
you go. That's it. That's better. Okay, sounds good. All right. So anyway, let's get started with the coach because that's been a big off-season story. Is that going to? Do you think in time that's just going to be forgotten, especially as long as the team wins games? You know, a lot of people were like, "Well, if anybody would have found out about Matt Patricia and that story before he would have got hired, he never would have got hired." I don't know. I mean, you hear these things all the time, and I just think it's especially something that's happened so long ago. I just think it's so wrong. So, I mean, is that how everybody's treating it now? That just it's something that'll be forgotten before too long?
I think so. It's a serious issue, and I think it's important that it came to light, but it was 22 years ago, and it doesn't seem like there's going to be any new developments in the case at this point, and so the Lions have decided they're going to stand next to him, they're going to stand with him, and you know, they've done their own little bit of investigation and believe that Matt Patricia, who adamantly says he's innocent, and the Lions have believed him, and if there's nothing new that's going to come of this case, which I doubt it will now that it's 22 years in the past, I think, yeah, it'll just kind of die as a news story as things go on, and wins cure everything, whether rightfully or wrongfully. If Matt Patricia wins with the Lions, then no one's going to be talking about this ever again.
All right, well, let's also talk about the new defensive coordinator, Paul Pasqualoni, who comes in. Now he's been around a long time, and I wanted to see what the connection was, and I guess the connection was Pasqualoni, of course, made his name to fame when he was at Syracuse all those years, and Patricia was grad assistant at the time. So I guess that's when they knew each other, and you know, obviously they must have kept in contact. Pasqualoni may not be a genius level as far as considered he's a hot commodity, especially at his age. But he's a smart guy. He's been around a long time, and especially for a new head coach, that has to be a valuable asset for Patricia.
Absolutely. The guy's coached for almost 50 years in football, and I think, like you said, like you nailed it on the head. The Syracuse connection is huge there. For a first-time head coach, you want to surround yourself with people that you already have a working relationship with, some people that you're comfortable with, some people that know your style of coaching, know your style of defense. Obviously, defense is very important to Matt Patricia, so the fact that he got someone that he's already worked with, someone that was essentially his mentor at Syracuse, is a big get for him. And Paul Pasqualoni has had a couple stints in the NFL, some successful, some not so successful. So I think, like you said, not exactly a football genius, but I feel like Matt Patricia is going to have his hand on this defense more so, maybe even more so than Paul Pasqualoni. So the fact that he's got someone who knows what he's going to want is really key for him.
All right, let's look at the roster, and we know how good Stafford is. So right now, Ruddock against Castle for the backup job. Tell you the truth, I was kind of surprised. I heard somebody on one of the top networks talking about how, hey, you know, it's kind of surprising that maybe Jake Ruddock's got a chance to win the number 2 job. Look, I've seen Matt Castle play football the last couple of years whenever he's had an opportunity. I don't even think he should be playing football anymore, to tell you the truth. So to me, it would be a shock if Ruddock isn't the backup.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting camp battle. I'm not really sure what to expect out of that because Matt Castle obviously has a little bit of a Matt Patricia connection as they were both in New England for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'm with you. I think Jake Ruddock showed a lot of improvement during the preseason last year. He did get a little bit of playing time when Stafford went down with a hand injury. It did not go so well. He threw a pick six on his first drive. So he still has a lot to prove. But I think the Lions are pretty optimistic about Jake Ruddock in general. And at this point, I think I expect him to win the number 2 job. But the Lions also need kind of a veteran voice in there to help Stafford because Dan Orlovsky, who is making a great career right now as an NFL analyst, was a really valued commodity there in the quarterback room as just kind of a second coach for Stafford. And Matt Castle could technically be that guy, and the Lions could actually maybe carry 3 guys this year, which they haven't done in a couple of years. So I'm not really sure how it's going to shake out. I think Ruddock is probably going to be the first guy in if Stafford goes down, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Castle hang around too.
All right, let's go to running back. And as you mentioned, we talked about at the top, this is such an important position for the team this year. They bring in Blunt. They draft Johnson. And now all of a sudden you can use Abdullah and Riddick, which I believe it's going to be when it's all said and done. By the time the season's over, I think Abdullah and Riddick will get the 3rd and 4th touches as far as rushing touches. if all goes well injury-wise. And, Johnson making it in the NFL as a rookie, he also has to stay healthy, get stronger and all of that. But the talent is so much better and so much more deep as it's needed to be. Is Blunt the number one guy? Do you think he's going to end up the number one guy like we saw at the end of the season with the Eagles last year?
I think it's really going to be pretty evenly split between him and Kerryon Johnson, to be honest. I mean, you don't trade up in the second round to grab a guy that you're going to, only give 20% of the carries, I think.
Sure.
But Blunt is definitely going to be a huge part of this offense, too, because if there was one part of this offense that really, really struggled last year, it was short yardage situations. And Blunt is kind of the perfect back for that. He was really, really good at that in New England. He was kind of so-so at it last year, but the Lions really haven't had a physically imposing back like Blunt in quite some time, really. So if the Lions can use him to start picking up some third and shorts, maybe some fourth and shorts too, he's going to get a lot of carries. But I really expect Kerryon Johnson to be getting just as many and first and second down as well.
And it's entirely possible, right, that if Johnson looks the part this year, that next year it's Johnson as the workload number one and Riddick as the backup with Abdullah and Blunt. Really, I mean, their contracts are added to this year. And Blunt, you just never know at this stage of his career. But that's entirely possible, especially, I mean, that's the hope maybe even, too, with Johnson. I mean, they want him to be the guy.
Absolutely. I think you hit the nail on the head. Abdullah is a guy who he's very expendable at this point. He's nice and cheap right now since he's still on his rookie contract. Great injury insurance if anything were to happen. But at this point, he doesn't really have a role for the team, and you don't really see that role moving forward at all either. So, yeah, absolutely. I think Kerryon Johnson is their guy moving forward into 2019 and beyond. And, yeah, Theo Riddick is one of the best third down backs in the league. So I don't think the Lions plan on moving him anywhere, even though at this point he's probably third on the depth chart.
Okay, and by the way, they drafted the kid Bowden, the fullback, and they were going to use that position more than they have in the past, which, hey, if you want to run a power game, that's what you're going to do. But unfortunately, from what we hear, he had an ACL tear. That hasn't been confirmed yet, though, right?
Yeah, that's right. During minicamp, it looks like he went down with a knee injury, and early reports are that that was an ACL, although the team has not confirmed that, and they haven't moved him to IR or anything like that. But it does appear like his rookie season's probably over.
What do you think they do at this point? Because again, they drafted him for that purpose. Do you think they go out right now and try to bring in another body, or do you think they scrap that plan until next year?
Well, I think the plan is definitely to move forward with it. What they did last year was they converted a linebacker, Nick Ballore, to fullback, and this year he's already made the full transition to offense, so he's not even listed as a linebacker anymore. He's their fullback.
There you go.
The question is whether he can do it full time. He's had a little bit of experience doing it before he was with the Lions, but it's still a relatively new position, and it's definitely a new full time position for him. So. If that works out during training camp, they'll probably just move forward with that.
Okay.
But I wouldn't be surprised to see them go out and try to find someone as well to give them a little competition.
All right, sounds good. Let's go to tight end, and it's a new tight end group. Ebron, very disappointing as a first-round pick. They expected a whole lot from him, so he's gone finally. Darren Fells is gone. You bring in Wilson, you bring in the kid from Atlanta, and then there's Michael Roberts there. And Michael Roberts has got some talent, so this becomes an intriguing unit. Is Michael Roberts, is that a guy that the Lions would like to see become the number one tight end?
I think eventually, yeah. I don't think it's in the cards for him this year. I think the Lions are pretty high on Luke Wilson, but at the same time, Mike Roberts is also coming in with a lot of expectations. You know, he was really not used all that much last year in his rookie year. It kind of ended on a sour note, too, as he was suspended by the team for a game for missing a team meeting. But I think overall this team is actually very high on Michael Roberts, and I think they do expect him to be a number one receiver in time. I mean, he had, I think it was like 16 touchdowns in his last year at Toledo. So
sure,
the potential is absolutely there. He's got a really huge hands, really long catch radius, should be a really good red zone threat
And so I think the Lions are probably expecting to use him more in the red zone this year, and then I would expect him to make the jump to full-time starter as soon as next year.
Okay. Well, by the way, what did the team? What happened to Eric Ebron? What? I mean, right now, and we haven't even had the pads on yet. But right now, the Colts seem to be real happy with him. Sometimes that happens. You change the scenery, not the pressure of the first-round pick. But what was the problem with Eric Ebron?
It's tough to point down exactly what happened there, but it seems like the Lions were ready to move on from him as early as maybe even the beginning of last season. There were just a lot of drop issues with him. The fans had turned on him quite bitterly, to the point where anytime a pass was thrown his way and he didn't catch it, whether it was his fault or not, he would get loud boos at home, no matter what the score, no matter what the situation. And then, he was a really big name there during the trade deadline last year, and it seems like the Lions were certainly trying to move him, but didn't end up doing it. They tried to move him again this offseason. No one would bite because they pretty much knew that they were going to release him. His cap hit was $8.25 million, I believe, because they exercised his fifth-year option, and the Lions just decided they couldn't afford that, so they moved on from him, just straight up cut him. Didn't get anything in return, and I think both sides were just ready to move on. Ebron had been frustrated. He's a vocal guy, so he would get into fights with fans on Twitter and all that sort of stuff, which would only make fans even more sour about him. And a personality like that can be tough to handle. But there were no reports that he was a locker room cancer or anything like that. But he certainly has a vocal personality, and that can rub some people the wrong way.
All right, wide receiver, and this unit, if they can stay healthy, has definitely grown over the last couple of years thanks to Kenny Golladay. They bring in Marvin Jones and Golden Tate. So it's a nice three-man unit. Top guy, the top trio for the unit. T.J. Jones is also there. He's a pretty good number 4. I don't know about the depth past those four. You have to let me know if there's anybody to keep an eye on, but the main thing is keeping these guys healthy because I don't see a lot of depth there. And if they can, then and again, they can get a little bit better contribution in the running game, then and they've got a great quarterback, they should be okay. So who do you like the most as far as those three guys? You're looking at a big catch, or you're looking at even the next couple of years. Who do the fans like? Who do you like out of the three?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think fans are really, really excited about Kenny Golladay. Had a very promising rookie year, had to deal with some injuries in the middle of it, and his production kind of tapered off because of it. But that first game against the Cardinals, he scored 2 touchdowns, including a fantastic diving grab, and I think people have been very, very high on him since. And he really should get more opportunities this year now that he's healthy, and I think he's got 2 great receivers to draw a little attention away from him in Marvin Jones and Golden Tate. And I don't know what I can each of those guys really brings something different to the table. Marvin Jones is one of the best contested catchers in the league. He put on quite a highlight reel last year in what is definitely his best season in the NFL. And then Golden Tate is just they call him the Yak King now, the yards after catch king, because he can make anyone miss. He's caught, I believe, 90 catches 3 out of the past 4 seasons, gone over 1,000 yards 3 out of the past 4 seasons. Just a really consistent producer, very reliable in terms of health as well. And I like the unit as a whole. I think it's one of the best trios in the league. But if there's someone to be really, really optimistic about and maybe is trending upwards more than anyone else, it's probably Kenny Golladay.
Yeah, Jones and Tate both eclipsed 1,000 yards last season. I know Golladay brings them size, and that helps. But what if let's just say Golladay goes back and gets hurt again for whatever reason, or let's just say he doesn't become the guy that we expect him to become. Do they have a backup guy, another size player? Is there someone on the roster, or is that pretty much an issue right now?
It could be an issue. You mentioned T.J. Jones earlier. He went in when Golladay got hurt last year and played pretty well. He's not the same receiver as Golladay. They had to mix it up a little bit. But aside from him, it doesn't look great depth beyond the 4th guy. I'm not sure a lot of teams have a lot of depth beyond their 4th wide receiver. But if there's guys to keep an eye on, especially like a big target like Golladay, I would say Teo Redding, the undrafted free agent out of Bowling Green.
Okay.
He turned some heads during mini camp. He's a guy that I think could potentially make the team, or at least make the practice squad if he doesn't make the final 53. Other than that, they have a former UDFA, Jace Billingsley, who's very he's kind of a fan favorite, but he hasn't really made any production in his first 2 years in the league. But he's kind of more of a Golden State shifty receiver type. But aside from those two, I don't really see anyone else on the Lions roster making any sort of significant contributions in 2018.
Okay, let's go to the offensive line, and this has also been a work in progress over the last few years, but if they can keep everybody healthy, wow, this looks like the best offensive line I've seen in Detroit in a long time, if they can keep everybody healthy, of course. And they even have a couple of decent players, depth guys. Of course, Crosby was a guy that's going to add depth at either tackle position, which is nice. But if they can keep Decker and Wagner healthy and Lang, the veterans, and then you mentioned Glasgow earlier, and I mentioned Ragnow, that's a heck of a five.
Yeah, the Lions they're out of excuses at this point. If this offensive line can't come together and mesh and finally give the Lions a running game and give Stafford some time to throw the ball, then I'm out of ideas. I think everyone's out of ideas, because the potential of this unit is to really be, top 10 unit in the league.
Sure.
They just haven't put it together. And they were one of the worst units, in fact, last year. Hopefully Ragnow's that last piece. Hopefully, like you said, health was a big issue last year. They didn't even have 100 snaps together, the starting offensive line last year. So if they can somehow manage to get it done and stay healthy throughout the year, then, yeah, this should be a really, really good unit. And like you said, they're also improving the depth a little bit. Like you said, Kyle Crosby should be a really good addition, whether they view him as a guard or a tackle. They have Joe Dahl, who's a guy that they drafted a couple of years ago, who some thought could develop into a starter. That hasn't happened, but he should be good coming off the bench. And the Lions just continue to focus on that offensive line. Like I said, too, the new offensive line coach, Jeff Davidson, has some success turning around some bad running games. So I don't see any reason why this offensive line shouldn't be good, but the fact that it hasn't come together in Detroit is enough to make me worried at least a little bit.
All right, yeah. I mean, you basically replace Swanson. You bring in Ragnow, so that's a big deal. And then you keep those guys healthy. Wagner and Decker. Decker missed half a season last year. You get Greg Robinson out of there. That didn't work out. So
yeah, everyone's happy that he's gone, I think.
Yeah, so that again, keep everybody healthy, and this Detroit offense could be very special this season. Let's switch to the defensive unit, and up front, you run a 4-3 there, so everything starts up front. You got Ziggy Ansah. You have some underrated players there like Zettel. Love Zettel from his days at Penn State. You draft Hand. And also you got Robinson, Hand's old teammate, inside. Tell me a little bit about the depth. The depth in the interior looks maybe a little thin, but other than that, health-wise, if they can keep everybody healthy, this looks like a good unit, especially Ziggy Ansah. They got to keep him healthy.
Yeah, that's definitely, I think, the key to this unit is whether Ziggy can stay healthy. He's already shown signs of maybe not coming into 2018 healthy. He wasn't necessarily a full participant during minicamp, and that has a lot of Lions fans worried. But this unit is just kind of questionable at this point. We're not sure what they have out of it, because Matt Patricia said, we're not really going to have a base defense. We'll see a lot of 3-4 looks. We'll see a lot of 4-3 looks.
Okay.
We'll see some of these linebackers lining up on the edge. We'll see some of these linebackers dropping into coverage. So you look at a guy like Devon Kennard, who's technically listed as a linebacker, but he has experience playing defensive end, defensive tackle, and I imagine you'll probably see him in a whole bunch of these different roles next year. And it's interesting. I think the talent level, like you said, it's a little top-heavy. There isn't really a lot of depth there. Eshaun Robinson is a guy I think that Lions fans are hoping takes in another step this year. He's kind of been middling past few years. They've added a couple guys in the middle as well. Sylvester Williams is a guy who's going to be a big contributor this year. And then maybe one of the biggest wild cards is Kerry Hyder Jr., who had a really, really solid 2016 season, but tore his Achilles in the preseason last year. Coming off an Achilles is always tough, but at this point it seems like he's going to be ready for the beginning of the year. And there's some decent expectations for him. He was kind of coming into his own, and the Lions have really
looked for that guy opposite Ezekiel Ansah for a while. Haven't had a really good pass rusher opposite him, and it could be Hyder if he continues his development.
Yeah, that would be big. And by the way, what is the status as far as Ansah and his contract? What do you think is going to get done or not done here in the next couple of years?
I think at this point they're probably just going to ride out the franchise tag. It's a little pricey for him, $17.1 million. But I don't see the Lions able to commit to him long term just because of the injuries he's had over the past few years. He hasn't been the most reliable player in terms of just being on the field. When he's there and when he's healthy, he's absolutely worth the money. But at this point, it's hard to commit to him long term. You know, he's also 29 now, so he's getting up there in age. The injury issues are a big deal. So I think the Lions are probably just going to ride out the 2018 season and then kind of reevaluate at the end.
All right. We're going to get to I'm going to ask you about some injury questions in just about a minute. But before I do that, you mentioned Kennard, the linebackers. And, of course, this is a unit where you lose Whitehead. Now, he led the team in tackles last year. He was your top linebacker, very good against the run. So he's gone. And then you bring in 3 new linebackers, including Kennard. But Davis, really loved that pickup last year. Boy, is he a really good old-school middle linebacker. He's got great long-term potential. So, like you said, even though it looked like they played 2 linebackers a lot last year, you think that can change a lot? You think that especially now maybe there's a little bit more depth at linebacker?
Yeah, linebacker is an interesting question here. Matt Patricia's background is linebackers. He came up as a linebackers coach, so I think he falls in love with this unit a little bit, and that's why they went out and got so many guys. They got Freeney, who is a former Patriot. He's going to be valuable maybe just in the preseason in terms of helping guys learn the scheme, all that sort of stuff. Might not even eventually make the team, but I think he's actually a valuable pickup either way. But, yeah, guys like Devon Kennard, Christian Jones is another guy they picked up, and Jared Davis, like you mentioned. This is a guy who I think is going to be the linchpin of this entire defense. If he can take that next step, he kind of had an up-and-down rookie season, but he's a hard-nosed guy, really good against the run. Needs to pick it up a little bit in terms of pass coverage, but if he can take the next step, I think this linebacker unit has a chance to be really, really good. Lions also drafted another guy that same year, Jalen Reeves-Maben, who is kind of more of a coverage linebacker, who I think could also take a big step. Wasn't really used all that much in his rookie year. He could potentially be a starter this year. And the fact that we could potentially see some 4 linebacker looks means that we're going to see a lot of these guys on the field. And we'll see, I think, pretty quickly whether this linebacking group is actually better or worse than it was last year.
Okay.
Right now, there's just a lot of questions. There's a bunch of new guys. There's a bunch of young guys. And you never know how they're going to kind of mix together.
All right, talk about the secondary then. Tell us about the new changes there, and also the couple of free agents. You got a free agent in and a draft pick in, but it looks like a pretty decent secondary.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of their better units last year. I think Darius Slay made a huge jump in play. Now he's considered a top 5 cornerback in the league. They always have reliable Glover Quinn back there at free safety. I think the big story here with the secondary this year is what is going to happen with Teez Tabor, last year's second-round pick. Didn't do much his rookie year until kind of the end of the season there. He could be their number 2 guy this year, which would be a big step for him because the Lions also did re-sign Nevin Lawson, kind of an up-and-down guy. Had some success, had some failures last year. But if Teez can take that jump already in his second year, they usually say it takes 3 or 4 years for a cornerback to really adjust to life in the NFL.
Yeah.
He had a good minicamp.
That's what I heard.
Things are promising there. I think it might still be a little bit too early to expect too much from him, but the Lions have a lot of youth there. They have a lot of talent in the secondary, and I think it's almost certainly the strength of this defense going forward as it was last year.
Now, when Wilson got hurt last year, Diggs moved to safety, correct?
That's right, yep.
And so how do you think, it wasn't like Wilson had a great season anyway, so how do you think that's going to work out? Does Diggs stay at corner? Does he compete now at safety for a job? How do you think the starting unit is going to shake out, especially with those players? And then of course the rookie too. I'm not sure. He probably has another couple of years before you can count on him for a lot of snaps, though.
Yeah. Tracy Walker is a guy. He's also a small school guy at Louisiana Lafayette. So I think you see him mostly on special teams this year. But
your question about Quandre Diggs is a fascinating one. I'm not entirely sure what they're going to do because when Quandre made that move to safety last year, he got interceptions in 3 straight games, which he hadn't even had an interception in his career prior to that. So he was quite successful, and he's an aggressive tackler. So I think that strong safety role is perfect for him. And one thing also about Matt Patricia's defense is that he loves safeties as well. They have a lot of 3 safety looks. So I think if you're going to see Quandre Diggs on the field a lot this year, it's probably going to be back at that safety.
Okay.
It also, that doesn't mean that Tavon Wilson isn't going to get some playing time too, because he also has that Patriots history. He's worked under Matt Patricia before. He knows his defense. So I think you're going to see them on the field together quite a bit. And I think that's probably where Quandre Diggs really fits in the best on this defense. The question then becomes, who do you have at nickel corner? And that could be Jamal Agnew, who kind of made a name for himself last year as a rookie, as a punt and kick returner.
Yep.
It could be a bunch of guys. It could be Deshaun Shedd, the guy that they picked up in free agency from Seattle this year. They have a lot of talent there. They have a lot of options, and they have a lot of versatility, which is something that Matt Patricia really, really values. And it kind of makes creating a depth chart kind of tricky because these guys are going to be playing so many different roles.
Uh-huh.
But you're just going to see a lot of different guys on the field in the secondary because they have so much talent back there.
And by the way, I found it interesting because you lost Don Carey, who played in the deep patrol and very good gunner on special teams, and then you draft Walker. So I almost get the feeling that maybe Walker could be a guy that replaces Carey in a way. On special teams. He ain't going to be the special teams player Carey was, of course, just yet. But I don't know. I kind of get the feeling that that's kind of why Walker might have been brought in, because I also thought he was probably drafted a little bit earlier. I don't think many people thought he'd be a third-round pick.
Oh, absolutely. It was definitely a surprise. I can't tell you how many Lions fans, including myself, never really even heard of the guy when the guy's name was called. But you definitely bring up a good point there because the Patriots kind of way, and Bob Quinn, the general manager of the Lions now, who also comes from the Patriots, really value special teams. It's a really kind of an underrated position that I think a lot of teams overlook, but it's never been that way with the Patriots and the Lions. Ever since Bob Quinn has come in 3 years ago, the Lions special teams units have been very, very, very good. And so I think you're right. I think Deshaun Shedd has some special teams experience. I think he's going to be great in that role. The question is how early will he be good in that role? Because, like I said, small school guy, rookie year, it's a strong learning. It's a big learning curve. So I'm not sure he's going to be Don Carey-esque in his first year. But,
yeah.
I think that's the definite plan, is to have someone like him play a big role on this team, which is that gunner position. Okay.
Then before I wrap it up, you mentioned, we've been talking about special teams. So Prater, of course, is back. Martin is also back. And no problems there, right? I mean, especially Matt Prater had a very strong year, including 7 of 11 from 50-plus. He's actually 43 of 56 for his career, so that's pretty awesome. And even though it did look like Martin did have some issues after a pretty good 16, it looked like he may have he didn't have the year that maybe they were expecting from him. Is Martin's job secure? Because we know Prater's is.
Yeah, I think it is. But you're absolutely right. His 2017 season was absolutely a letdown in terms of what they were expecting of him. It came in that he suffered an off-season injury, so he missed the first couple games. So I think some believe that maybe once that is completely out of the picture, which it is by now, that he's going to be fine. The Lions did bring in an undrafted rookie, Ryan Santoso, to kind of be that punter-kicker combo in training camp. I'm assuming he's just a camp body who's there to take some reps while Sam Martin rests, but I think his job is safe, and I think really where this special teams unit might thrive is not only in the kicking game, because you mentioned Matt Prater has been one of the most reliable kickers in Detroit, and that's saying something considering how long Jason Hansen was with the team.
Sure.
But Jamal Agnew, as I mentioned before, was essentially the best punt returner in the league last year. He was an All-Pro.
Yep.
2 punt return touchdowns last year. I think people are continuing to be very excited for him. He may even take over kick return duties. I think that job is still kind of up for grabs. So if there's a question with the special teams unit is who's going to be that kick returner. But everything else is pretty solid, I think, on this Lions squad.
You think Abdullah might get a shot at the kick return job?
Absolutely. Actually, in 2015, he was second in the league in kick return average.
Oh,
the
okay.
question there is just how many running backs are the Lions going to carry on the game day roster? So that 46-man roster. The Lions only carried 3 running backs almost every week last year. And with Abdullah, with Theo Riddick, with Kerryon Johnson, with LeGarrette Blount, and now also potentially a fullback, now you're talking about 5 instead of 3, and I don't see the Lions making that sort of drastic transition on game day. So, again, Abdullah might be the odd man out there, and they might have to find a contributor elsewhere.
All right. Well, either way, it's great to get all this information before training camp starts out of you before the Detroit Lions because, as I said, look, it may not be this year, but I'm really high on this team, and especially Matthew Stafford. I've always been a big Matthew Stafford fan, and now it looks like he's finally got the help. And to be honest with you, I was never really a big Jim Caldwell fan, so I think we don't know what Matt Patricia could do as a coach yet, but I think it's a good gamble. And if Patricia does a good job at that spot, and they stay healthy, this could be a really good year for Detroit, and this could be a great 2 or 3 year period for the Lions fans, and you'll be able to see a playoff game, and you'll be able to see a playoff win, and who knows? I mean, the Eagles won the Super Bowl for crying out loud, and they came from nowhere in 2 years. So if they could do it, so can the Lions, right?
Yeah, and either way, I think the NFC North is going to be a very, very interesting division, not only this year but going forward.
Jeremy, I appreciate it. Thanks for your time. We look forward to talking to you again later on in the season.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Jeremy. That's Jeremy Reisman, once again, covering the Detroit Lions at SB Nation. And you can check it out, Pride of Detroit. They do a really good job there covering the Lions. So wanted to get Jeremy on, and he knows what he's talking about with this Lions team. This is definitely a team I'm setting aside. We've done how many of these training camp previews so far? We've done about, we've done less than 10 so far, I think. But at this point in time, Detroit might be my top sleeper. And I'm not talking playoff. Let's get a playoff win sleeper. I'm talking about go deep into playoff sleeper. So we'll see how things go, though. We still got to watch training camp and deal with injuries and take a look at a couple of preseason games. I value them a little bit, preseason games. I do. Of course, we don't care about the score. But I like, especially when you got a new coach, head coach, and all that kind of stuff, and a new emphasis in the running game, there are things you want to see. I think the Lions' preseason games are going to matter a little bit. Okay, so anyway, that's that. We're going to talk Chicago Bears football. I know you Lions fans are happy to hear that. Robert Zaglinski beat an NFL writer for Windy City Gridiron. Also at SB Nation is going to join me in a couple of hours. We'll post that like we do all of our interviews online. You can follow us on Twitter at PrimeSN. That's the best way to find out when the interviews and all our shows on the Our Lads Football Network are available at ourlads.com. You can also order a subscription of your choosing at Our Lads, including the Our Lads NFL Draft Review Guide. That's available right now. So check that out. And we'll see you next time here on the OFN Meeting Room on the Our Lads Football Radio Network, where it's never too early to think about the start of the 2018 football season.